Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Polite Society podcast. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. We're going to be rolling here with recording in just a few seconds. Your broadcast team tonight, my cohort in crime and long-term friend and helper, Rob Morse, Charlie Cook, and Amanda Suffcooler here, where we've got an interview with Mike Ochs, firearms trainer and author, coming up here as soon as we get the show cranked up and rolling. I just need to get social media connected so that we can get your comments in. And whoops, I don't want to do that one. I want to come back over here.
Whoever is making a sound that sounds like they're cracking their knuckles, stop that.
Does it sound a little bit like that? That's my nervous tension.
Tape your fingers together, partner. Take off your ring. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, I'm not taking off my ring. There was a huge fight when I went in for my neck surgery about that.
For or against?
They wanted me to take off my ring, and I said, "You're operating on my neck, not my finger. I'll cancel this whole darn thing." I said, "I'm married. I wear my wedding ring." And that Susan, how did that end up?
You waited till you were sedated?
No, actually, I convinced him to let me take it off and put it on my finger next to my band until he got out of surgery, and then it went back on his hand.
Oh wow! You mean he was reasonable? How can that be?
I threatened to hurt him.
Well, and they also gave me some drugs.
Yeah.
I will do it too.
Yeah, he was lubed.
They gave me some drugs and said that what was it? My brain isn't working very well right now, sweetheart. They told me I was I forget. We'll get to it another time. But I was. They said just a little bit. You should be all right. And I said, I'm sitting pretty. Just.
And then he told the orderly he looked pretty too.
There you go. Give him a Scooby snack.
That was about the time I told him to let me take the ring, and he went, okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right. I think on my end, everything is hooked up. Everything is responding. And we are ready to go ahead and start a real. Whoops, I need to do one more thing. I need to bring OpsLens in. And we are now hot to OpsLens. If you're just joining us on OpsLens, hello everybody. And if you are joining us in any of the other live video formats, you may want to check out OpsLens as well. Both we broadcast here. Amanda's Eye on the Target radio broadcasts to OpsLens. A lot of great pro freedom shows broadcast live on OpsLens as well. You may want to check them out. But I think, folks, I'm ready to start pushing buttons, starting the recording process, and getting the show on the road. So, are we ready for Masada Ayub?
Go.
Okay, here we go. Mass's deep voice in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
And I don't have show notes up. Hello. How many times have I done this? About 610. Hi, welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, January the 31st, 2022. I'm Paul Lathrop.
We're seasoned professionals. Don't try this at home.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm Rob Morse. On tonight's show, we talk with instructor and author Mike Ochs about how armed defenders should train.
I'm Amanda Suffolk, and we'll talk about a bill that is in the state of New York that makes most firearms training illegal and turns most businesses into gun-free zones. It is New York, you know.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about a tobacco store owner that used force to defend his store. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 610 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, we are back. It's Monday night. Rob, it's been a little bit since we've talked. What have you been up to?
It's been days, Paul.
Telling you, man.
It's Monday afternoon. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. We had so much news to talk about that I kind of just gave up on it, and we just had a conversation. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I carried it every day. Not that much news. Amanda, what have you been up to?
Well, there was a few of us that were at SHOT, a few of us from the show. Charlie, Robin, John, and I were we'll say the only hosts because Paul, you and Rob, Nanner, didn't go.
Right.
Yeah, but we had a great time being on the air when you weren't here.
Okay, well, SHOT was great. Not because you weren't there, but it was great. There was less people, more business, and more talk time with the people that mattered. And what I hear from most of them was that the same amount of business took place. They just didn't have to climb over somebody to get to the somebody they wanted to talk to. And then, of course, Radio Row was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Tell me what that's like, Amanda.
I'll show you pictures. You couldn't wipe the smile off my face. But no, they moved us to the middle of the show floor. So Radio Row was absolutely in the middle of the show floor. It was awesome.
I would imagine that made it a little bit difficult to get clean audio.
It was you had a rumble. Yeah, there's an underlying rumble that just kind of gave you almost an energy in the room kind of sound.
All right. Thank you.
So you just kind of learn to live with that. So Charlie, what about you?
It's been a while since I've been on the show, and SHOT Show, just like Amanda said, SHOT Show was very good. It's great because they're like 18-hour days that are nonstop on the go. And one of the things that was really nice is the companies that were not there set up little lounge areas in the areas where they usually have their booths. So instead of having to go outside of the big room to sit down and relax and catch up with people, or to have to go to the media room up 2 floors, there was space on the floor, which was really cool. And anyway, so SHOT was great. I've had some classes at SHOT Show. I finally got to be on the Arms Room Radio with Mike Pewarski and Earl Boone. I was excited about that. I also did a rundown with Mike and Craig DeLuz. And it was great. It was so great to see so many people. Of course, there's people we wanted to connect with that we didn't get a chance to connect with, but it was great to see a bunch of people there and see all of our pro-gun friends from around the country. Paul, Susan, what's been happening with you two here at the Daily Bullet?
Well, we've been doing the Daily Bullet. Plans came. Well, first of all, I want to say I had a huge amount of fun yesterday. I got to be on Amanda's Eye on the Target radio, and normally when you see me on the Daily Bullet, there's a flag background behind me. When you see me on the Weekly Bullet, or you see me here, you get the current picture you see behind me. I decided I absolutely had to have a little bit of fun yesterday, and so I came up with a unique background to put behind me when I appeared on Amanda's show. And I had a blast with it. What we did, we talked about the Daily Bullet moving to podcast because of social media throttling, and believe it or not, since we've done that, we have gone from we thought the thought was you're going to lose all your views. How are you going to recover from that? We've already in podcast downloads gone past where we were in views. So we're growing. We're growing quickly, and I am just loving it. Just like with the we are going around mainstream media to get information out there. Well, if social media is throttling you, you go around social media and go directly to the people. So that's our story there. And then last night, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh wait! You're gonna leave him hanging and not even tell him what the background was. You just
that's what I'm dying to know. I'm like, what was the background?
You're gonna have to get a subscription to my what is it? Well, my brain isn't working.
To Eye on the Target Radio, you could go. No, it didn't include anybody that was nude or naked or dancing.
No,
none of that.
Go to Eye on the Target Radio.
On OpsLens. Go to OpsLens in their Facebook page. And he was at the bottom of the hour, so at the 30-minute mark.
Exactly. You gotta be tuning into these things, folks. This is good stuff.
You lose.
It was good stuff. I'm surprised there aren't memes about this yet. But anyway.
It's only been 24 hours.
And then last night, Susan, plans came about that there's this big Second Amendment rights rally that's happening in Arizona. Susan, what are the dates? It was February...
The rally is February 19th.
Okay. And it turns out that Susan and I are going to be able to attend that rally, and I'm going to be able to help out broadcasting that rally.
Nice.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what's been going on with me. So, Susan, anything you want to talk about?
Nope, just working with the DC project. Trying to get some phone calls and emails to the South Dakota legislature in support of the new shooting complex that they're working on out in the Black Hills.
Tell them a little bit about that, because somebody from Game Fish and Parks got a hold of you, right?
They got a hold of the guy who got in touch with me. I spoke with John Canta earlier from South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. The shooting complex is gorgeous. It has the support of Governor Nome and South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. They're looking at 10 handgun bays, 10 rifle bays. They're looking at a huge building with several classrooms so they can do youth programs. They're going to do some hand-to-hand training, some firearms training. It's going to be fabulous.
Very cool.
Right now, we're just working on getting some support for the so they can. It's going to be tomorrow. It'll be in the Appropriations Committee, and they're looking to ask for $2.3 million to help build it. It will still happen, even if we don't get the funding from the state. It'll just take us a little longer. So that's all I'm doing, is just working with that. Getting ready to head to Phoenix in a couple of weeks.
All right. Well, how about we do this? We need to head off to break because our guest Mike is sitting there patiently waiting for us, and I want to get to him. So how about I talk to you folks a little bit about the Self-Defense Radio Network, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. Self-Defense Gun Stories is up there. You can see Eye on the Target Radio. Although, Amanda, we need to get your new logo up there. Riding Shotgun with Charlie is there. There's 15 up there, shows up there now. All you have to do is to click on the show, and you can, and the browser dies. Okay, well, it's in such.
It's magic there. When you click on it, you generally get something.
You get you get the episodes on the right, and there's subscription links. Everything is there for you. You can subscribe or whatever you'd like right off the website. It's sdrn.us. So we are going to hear from ACLDN, and when we come back, we'll have our interview with Mike Ox right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Okay, folks, we are back. I'm gonna take the reins here, Paul, if you're okay with that, because I invited Mike to be our guest. I feel like it's a Disney movie. Be our guest. Be our guest. So it's just, I don't know where my head is today, but there we go. So, hey, I had Mike on my show, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I was really impressed, and I thought that the Polite Society podcast listeners would enjoy talking to him, hearing from him, and getting some input from him. So Mike Ochs's name is actually not Ox, it's Ochsner?
Ochsner,
Go
like
ahead.
Oxner.
Ochsner. And he wrote a book called Real World Gunfight Training. And as you start to look at the book and you start to talk to Mike, you'll realize that he's kind of the real deal. And I have to say, I'm going to compare him to another instructor that I have trained with that I am really impressed with. And this is a very good comparison in my book, and that is that I put Mike right up there with Brian Hill in being able to explain to you how your body works, how your system works, and why you struggle with things and why you have difficulties with things and how you overcome those things. And the fact that they can explain it in a way to where it clicks and it connects is a talent that we don't hear from a lot of instructors. And so I really want to feature that. One of the things that he starts out with is talking about the illusion of competency. And we have a lot we've heard people like that, where they get a gun, they get 6 bullets, and they're like, I got a gun, it's now my magic cloak, and I'm fine with it. And we all know that that's not the case. So I want to introduce you to Mike Ochsner, and I want you to check out his book, Real World Gunfight Training, after you hear some of the stuff that he has to say here. Mike, welcome to the Polite Society podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you, Paul and Rob and Charlie, and it's great to be on with you guys.
So, Mike, what Amanda was describing, some people I hear describe it as a Dunning-Kruger effect. You don't know how much you don't know. And then once you start learning, you realize how much you didn't know, and it becomes worrisome because, goodness, how much is there out there yet to learn?
Yeah, there's 2 components to it. One is Dunning-Kruger, where 2 things happen. One, people who know very little think that they know way, way more than they do. The other side of it is that if you go to a 1-day, a 2-day, a 3-day class, at the end of that class, you're able to drive the gun based on what's in working memory and short-term memory. And what we're more concerned about is our ability to operate out of long-term memory of days or weeks later when lives may count on our performance. And so when we're able to operate out of working memory in a class, at the end of a class, we create that illusion of competency. We think that we are as good as we were on our best day of training at the end of the day. And in reality, we're only as good as we are when we're cold and surprised and have to perform on demand.
Mike, can I? Amen. Now let's talk. Can we talk about why you and I have seen what I call institutional training, where it's like we're going to give you way more than you can remember. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, what you remember is up to the student, not the instructor. But we can document that we showed it to you. So it's almost as if the class was designed so that we could say we showed you, not that you'd actually carry it away with you 2 weeks later. Are we talking about the same thing?
We're talking about exactly the same thing. It allows both training programs and students to check boxes of information that they've been exposed to, possibly even information that they can rattle off at a party, but it's not something that they've converted to a skill that they can perform on demand.
Right, but a lot of people think that, and since I'm the only woman in the room here, I'm gonna play this, that genetically you guys, and I'll start with you guys, think that because you were born male, you can drive a stick shift, run a chainsaw, shoot a gun, and there's all of that stuff that just inherently comes with your man card. And so teaching people that their illusion of competency is an illusion, and then actually giving them the true competency is really where we're at.
Yeah, and there's a few layers to the problem, but one of them is most classes, they teach skills that are built on top of concepts that are built on top of vocabulary, and the student is trying to learn all three at the same time. And the way that it should happen in order to learn skills quickly is for all of the vocabulary and all of the concepts to get pushed out to the student in the days and weeks ahead of the live training, so that by the time they get there, they know all the words that the instructor is using. They know all of the concepts that the instructor is talking about, and ideally, they've watched video of the instructor performing the skills, and they've visualized themselves learning them and performing them, and they've started to create the neural pathways with something called mirror neurons. With babies, we call it monkey see, monkey do. But
most instructors have a hard time with that, because that says, oh, well, why do they even need to come then? I just given them the secret sauce.
Yeah, that is a very common concern, and it's not the case.
It's wrong.
Yeah, you look at people who read a book and then they still go to the movie, or people who read a book and then they get the Audible version, or go to the play. I mean, they see the exact same thing in multiple different ways. And Mike, that's the way we're wired.
Mike, you can now document to the decimal place how we learn well and how we don't. In some sense, have we reinvented the apprentice program?
Oh, you mean the TV show The Apprentice, or you mean just
no, not at all. Heck with that. No, but you're fired. For millennia, I've actually never watched it. For millennia, we went, show me what I showed you yesterday. Okay, let me tune it up. Okay, show me how you put it together with what you already learned. Good. Okay, here's the next trick. Good. I'll show you. No, not quite. Yes, you got it. And here's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. I mean, that has gone on for as long as, 50,000 years? Well, as long as we had language and history?
Yeah, then voila, you're a blacksmith, or you're a cobbler, or you're a cabinet maker.
Yeah, 4 years later, maybe.
Right.
Even more applicable, you take a look at warrior cultures. Take a look at the Spartans. You take a look at the samurai. You take a look at the ninjas. How they trained up their warriors, and they didn't do it in a weekend training and then expect people to act and perform 4 weeks later. They did it with small blocks of training over time, and it was a gradual introduction, and it was a consistent exposure to the material and to the skills.
When you say consistent, what do you mean?
Depends on which context. With firearms training, what I mean by it is practicing 5 to 15 minutes a few days a week. It doesn't have to be every day. In fact, there's some there's some studies that show that there's an advantage to having 48 hours between practice sessions as opposed to 24.
Right. Okay. 2 sleep cycles. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is really interesting. What I really like about what you do, Mike, is that you really get into figuring out the things that we do and how we do them and why we do them. And there's a lot of depth to all the stuff that you put out, and making it so that us lay folks can understand it is really a wonderful thing.
Well, thank you. That was a huge challenge. That took about a year to get the concepts in the book simple enough to where people could understand them and use them. And a lot of them, like spreading stuff out before a class, are very, very simple to do. And it's something that even if the instructor doesn't do it, in most cases the student can go and read what the instructor has written. They can watch videos of the instructor either talking or teaching, and at least get into their head somewhat and minimize the amount of new material that they're getting when they get to live training.
Interesting, Mike. You've met the engaged student. He is going and getting all the material he possibly could, before he ever sees you. He's primed for each lesson. Is that why those students are so much better? Because they've spread their learning over a longer period of time?
Yeah, and we see it in several places. One is in special operations training, where recruits get washed out and recycled back to the next class. And what we see is their success rate is incredibly high. And it's the same material, they're just getting exposed to it a second time. And it's not new and it's not as novel anymore. And they're able to move forward at a faster pace.
Let me ask this. It seems that, and if I'm way off base, please feel free to correct me, that a little bit of exposure, a lot, meaning maybe a couple times a week, for a little, 10 to 15 minutes, a couple times a week, is going to be far superior to one weekend, maybe every 6 months. Am I picking things up correctly here?
Yes, absolutely. And the speed that skill drops off is pretty astounding. Force Science Institute did a study a couple of years ago where they looked at several different academies in different states, and they looked at baton strikes in particular. And then all of these recruits passed the academy, became law enforcement officers, and then they were tested a few weeks later. And they almost all failed in their ability to deliver strikes accurately and correctly, and more importantly, their judgment skills had dropped off during those few short weeks. And so we see this, if the skill isn't delivered over time, if it's crammed together and we're teaching in order to pass a test, and then there's the relief that you passed the test, and then there's not sustainment training after it, the skill just peters out.
So are we talking continued training, or are we talking practice, or are the two close enough to the same thing?
That gets really fuzzy, and it depends on the stress level that you want to perform at and the complexity of the skill. In general, you can do up to 50% of your reps with mental rehearsal and not see a drop in performance. And that came from, I'm forgetting Rob's name. The book's Decoding Greatness. Very, very good book on experts and learning and shortcuts to learning. I'm sorry, what was there was another part to the question, and I got one part of it.
Well, recurring training as opposed to practice, and are they close to the same thing?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do at home alone. If you, well, at first you're working on the skill, and then you're working on the application of the skill, and that may be with mental rehearsal. So at first it's just pure focus on the skill, and then you start putting yourself mentally into situations where you may need to use the skill, and you add discernment based on visual cues to the drill. And that again has a huge carryover to the real world. And whenever possible, yes, absolutely, you want to do training against both compliant and non-compliant training partners. Compliant at first. Once you know that your technique doesn't fall apart and your decision making doesn't fall apart, then non-compliant.
Okay. So when you're first practicing, do you focus on precision? Do you focus on speed? So speed, accuracy, that slow is fast and fast is whatever, that thing. What do you do?
Yeah. So there's a few ways to look at that. One is what stage of learning you're in. For the very, very new shooter, they want to lay down precise neural pathways. So they want to focus on doing everything correctly, every component of the technique. And as they're able to, they want to add speed. But as soon as things go off the rail, they need to give themselves permission to slow back down a little bit. And there's been a few studies on this. I'm blanking on his last name. The main scientist and engineer for the TV show Deadliest Warrior, he did work on his own, and then he wrote a paper and referenced 11 other studies on slow training. And what they found was that the speed that creates the most activation in the brain is 60% of the speed that you naturally want to go. So if you think, and the reason for that is you can start paying attention to something other than just the very beginning and the very end. And Max Michel talks about that also, about doing 80% of your dry fire practice at 50% speed. And again, it's so that you can pay attention to the details in the middle. And it's not doing 100% at 50%. It's not doing 100% at 60%. It's doing a good chunk at a slow speed and then adding speed and finding out where things fall apart.
Interesting.
So when people practice at home, what are some things that they would need? Would they need snap caps? What lasers, shot timers? What kind of things?
Oh, I'm not a real big fan of snap caps, and especially for at-home dry fire training. And the reason for that is this came from a conversation I had several years ago where Larry Yatch, was a former Team 3 SEAL, and he had a stress training lab up in Minnesota. Great facility, great guy. And he said, when you dry fire, do you expect it to carry over to live fire? And I said, well, yes, of course. I wouldn't do it otherwise. He said, well, do you rack your slide between reps in dry fire? I said, yes. He said, does that carry over to live fire? And I said, no, of course not. He said, well, how do you train in a way that your brain knows what to carry over from dry fire to live fire and what doesn't carry over from dry fire to live fire? And I don't have an answer to that other than doing everything that you can to make your training mimic reality. Because I don't know how to break it down and say, okay, this part of what I'm doing, I really want to learn. I really want it to carry over. But this other part, I should forget it.
And it's important that I forget it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So is that where you select? Is this where you select a different firearm, one that resets itself so you don't have to? I mean, because some you can pull the trigger multiple times, some you can only pull the trigger once.
Right. Well, Glock's a good example. You end up with a dead trigger on a Glock. Well, if
Right.
you take a piece of paracord and stick it out the ejection port, it's like sticking a piece of cardboard in the ejection port. You end up with a fully articulating trigger on a Glock. And so you can do multiple rep dry fire sequences with a Glock without any big modifications.
I'm watching Charlie. Charlie's like, wait, explain it again?
Like, how do I do this?
Go ahead, Mike.
Charlie, call me. I'll talk you through it.
Mike,
You know, when we get to the break, I'll go get it and I'll set it up, and then when we come back, I'll show you.
Well, we are at the break, so we do have to step aside, folks. When we come back, we will have Mike. Can you hang for one more segment?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, he's coming back.
All right. We are going to step aside to break. We're going to hear from SAF, and we'll have more with Mike when we come back right after this.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your Second Amendment rights through gun bans, gun confiscation, and government regulations. Now, Joe Biden is no longer hiding his real intentions, and we need you to take action now.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle, is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things. But
the Biden administration is coming after your right to own any gun, and we need you to text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Joe Biden has already issued executive orders. He is now demanding Congress push through radical gun legislation. You can fight back to stop Joe Biden's gun grab, but you must text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Take action to protect your right to keep and bear arms. We urgently need millions of Americans to text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221.
Hey, everybody. We are back. This is the Polite Society podcast. This is our second interview segment with Mike Ox. And, Mike, before we go any further, just a few weeks ago, we were pulled down on YouTube because I reached off screen and grabbed a AR that my wife gave me for Christmas and proudly showed it to the audience. And then YouTube said, no, you cannot handle firearms on a live broadcast. You can pre-record, but just
How
go
about
ahead.
paintball? How about a paintball
you know what?
pistol?
Let's try it.
There's only one way to find out, right?
Yes. If we go away, then we know what happened.
Right.
And for
So the
YouTube,
okay, and it's the YouTube is because they're afraid that on live bad things will happen. Is that?
I do not know, but I do know that if you handle a firearm on a live YouTube video, it goes away almost instantaneously because it was less than 30 seconds and we were down on YouTube that night.
Wow, I know the guys at the Gun Owners Radio in San Diego use a banana when they do their dry firing because YouTube took them down. Yeah, YouTube took them down for having a blue gun on video. So
so maybe we don't want to do it. So maybe
let's skip this. I'll teach Charlie behind the scenes. That'd be fun.
Yeah, basically.
Right.
There you go.
Oh, here,
so this isn't a gun.
Okay.
Yeah, I can show you. So this was one of my first patents, and it's ridiculously simple. It's a length of paracord with an aluminum spacer or an aluminum standoff and that's slightly smaller than a 9mm chamber. And you stick this in the ejection port. This blocks the chamber. This can stick out the ejection port, and it holds the slide just slightly out of battery, enough so that you end up with a resetting trigger. Not a resetting trigger, a fully articulating trigger. So it doesn't click, but it does let you do multiple presses.
Gotcha. See, this is why I like dry firing with a revolver, because I do think it's lifting with the heavyweights. And switching, I always tell folks, if get a revolver and dry fire with that, and everything after that's going to be a breeze as far as trigger squeeze.
I've gotten old, and I found that that's the first time it's actually put me ahead of the curve a little bit. I transitioned to red dots because that way I didn't have to say stop. could I get on my reading glasses so I can see the front sight?
Yep.
And sorry, it's just, but that's not easy for everybody to do. I'd shot enough competition that the dot was there. Well, how do I get my students to get there from here when they start?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. There's a couple of different levels to it. One is if we look at changing our mindset from aiming with the sights and aiming with the red dot to aiming with our presentation and then verifying sight alignment with our sights and the red dot, it changes the game. It puts the pressure not on adjusting so that everything is lined up, but the movement leading up to getting the gun out between our dominant eye and the target, that carries the heavy weight of aiming the gun. Yeah. And if we get to where we can do that with irons, and ideally both with our eyes open and with our eyes closed, now all of a sudden, if you co-witness a red dot, it's going to be there when you present the firearm. Now that presentation, that's dependent on three things. One is vision, one ironically is balance, and the third is proprioception or hand-eye coordination. And if those three senses aren't calibrated and working together, then it's very, very likely that we're going to aim over there when we intend to aim there. And in a full day or even a half day point shooting class or unsighted shooting class, it's really, really common for high volume repetition to get those senses working together the way that they should. That's why you see such big improvements in point shooting classes. The problem is if you don't have a way to get those senses working together on a daily basis, it's a problem. The ability to point accurately is not natural.
It goes away.
It goes away. And another thing, with touch screens and gesture-controlled devices, there's been a significant amount of money in the last decade or so that has gone into exactly how accurately people can point. And the answer is not very accurate. And when they do, the way that they point is like this, with their knuckles up, not like this. And they point with their finger underneath what they're pointing at, which is really shooting way off over the target. So the pointing that people have done since they were born isn't the same as the pointing that we need to do with a firearm. It's a different type of pointing.
Yeah, no, all that makes great sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds, in the NRA basic pistol class, they talk about the your natural point of aim, and it sounds like it's a lot more of that. Like you're really honing in on that.
Sort of, except for the fact that natural point of aim, if you focus on the natural point of aim, if you focus on a perfect stance, what that gives you is very fragile technique that you may not have the time to get into that type of position in a real world situation. What you really want is to be able to be at any angle and have your sights automatically come into alignment between your dominant eye and the target. And there's specific drills that I've gotten in my training that help people do that, and it creates a resilient technique so that if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have time to think through how to aim and how to get on target, you're going to be able to just put the gun up there and the sights are going to be in alignment automatically.
So when you say with your training, not only did you write a book, but you also offer video training, some kind of other training that you can help people with. And then when you're done answering that, then Charlie, I'll just hand it over.
All right. Yeah. So I've got 20 different online video-based courses on concealed carry, on vision training and tactical vision training, on situational awareness, carbine, and empty hands combatives, fighting to your gun. and the majority of them are neurologically based, which means that they address things like how vision and balance and hand-eye coordination play into skill with firearms, skill with empty hands, etc. And what it provides is a more efficient way to train. And an example is I've done a 3-minute vision training sequence with well over 1,000 shooters. And the average improvement in speed and accuracy after having them go through that 3-minute sequence of drills is 20%, and which is a huge jump from not changing technique, not changing gear, and not teaching a new skill. It's simply getting the brain to work more accurately and more effectively.
I'm not Charlie. Right?
So what I noticed is you brought, when you demonstrated this, you brought the gun straight up and then out, and I think that's a good way to do it, because you should already be focusing on what you want to shoot on, and you should bring the gun up into your sight and then make the adjustments as you're extending your arm out. Is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, and there's two answers to that. One is what happens at slower speed, and the second is what happens at high speed. And in general, curves or sharp angles get rounded off at high speed. And so anything that you do at slow speed, you need to basically bake into your training that there's going to be a degradation at high speed. So yeah, at low speed, I'm pretty angular with my presentation. The faster I go, the more smooth it is. But there's, as far as why you want to do that, especially at slow speed when you're learning a skill, you've got a cone of vision that goes about 10 degrees below horizontal that you can see with the fovea of your eye. And as soon as you can get the gun into that cone of vision, the quicker you can make micro adjustments as it's coming out to the full presentation. When you do a diagonal presentation, it doesn't enter that cone until the last instant. And when you come up and out in more of a hockey shape presentation, you get the sights into that cone of vision much earlier.
Let me ask something. This comes out of for you, Mike. This is going to seem like it's coming way the heck out of left field. Maybe even not in the same stadium. But I spent 20 years as a truck driver. Before that, I was a racing enthusiast and sometimes participant on both 4 wheels and 2 wheels. I have spent a lifetime working on my peripheral vision. Have you seen? Where does I've also had a stroke, so my speech doesn't work so well all the time. Are there studies? Does that vary, and can that where does that fit into getting accurate hits on target quickly?
So that's a really good question. Peripheral vision, there's absolutely drills that you can do to expand peripheral awareness and peripheral vision, and I've got them in one of my courses, and we'll go through. One of the things is, if you're in a environment where there's a lot of people walking around, let's say church or church security, it's very common, if you start to look for it, you can start identifying intent, age, and sex, and a lot of times the individual person by gait alone at almost 180 degrees or through 180 degree span. And it's a systematic process, but it's really straightforward, and the brain loves finding patterns. So you get a dopamine hit every time you're right, and it becomes a game, and it's a very effective way to improve situational awareness. And Oh, just blanked.
Welcome to my world.
There we go.
Yeah, right. Welcome to our world, dude.
As far as for shooting, this gets interesting because at the moment when you shoot, do you really want to have that much awareness about anything other than the immediate need? So we think about it.
At the exact instance, maybe not, but I'm going to argue that you are going to want it back, and you're going to want it back in a huge hurry.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And yes, there are relatively straightforward drills that you can do to shift from hyper-focus to wide awareness and back and forth. I'll just share one with you real quick that's relatively easy. And this is kind of a hybrid one, but if you hold a book out in front of you and read it out loud and have a training partner do a Pac-Man on one side or the other, and so your conscious mind is mostly taken up with reading and reading out loud specifically. It doesn't work if you read silently. And when do you see, and how different is it at different angles? And what you'll see is for most people, there's pretty big blind spots and pretty big open spots where you can see through a much larger range of motion.
Interesting.
All right, well,
so Paul, we're going to get Susan a sock puppet so you guys can play that game.
Oh, you can do it with lights. You can do it with your hand. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. Lights are interesting because a lot of times you won't have the.
They're not nearly as fun
as
getting her a sock puppet. You know, lamb chop.
Well, my big fear is she'll start with doing this, and all of a sudden it'll turn into something like that. At any rate, we burned up another segment, Mike. I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to join us tonight. And you've got a book out. How can people find out about that, man?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It was a lot of fun. And I've got the book Real World Gunfight Training, and it's at realworldgunfighttraining.com. And what it does is it shows people how to learn faster, retain skill longer, and train in a way where more of what they do transfers over to real world situations. And it makes training easier, it makes training more fun, and helps you get a lot more bang for your buck out of any live training that you do with an instructor in a formal class.
Very cool.
All right. Well, again, Mike, thanks for taking your time out to join us tonight. It's been an absolute blast, man.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, folks, we are going to step aside. We're going to hear from CNJFO. When we come back, we'll get to our news segment right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
All right, welcome back. And I want to, before we get off into the news segment, I want to get a couple of comments that came in while we were into the interview segment. John, let me get this up here. John said, deadly YouTube stunt. This is why live videos with guns are not allowed on YouTube. Mona Lisa Perez of Halstead, Minnesota, shot at a thick book that her boyfriend, Pedro Ruiz III, was holding, apparently believing that the bullet would not make it through. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a 50 cal gun, wasn't it?
I
don't know, but Pedro didn't make it.
I wouldn't shoot a 22 short at a book that somebody was holding. That's just me, though.
Yeah, it's.
And on top of that, I might shoot it at the book. Definitely not when somebody's hands are on it.
Bingo.
This is why it's. I mean, gee, this was a IQ test. My God!
You put a balloon on the backside.
Right. I mean, whenever there's, we get 3 gun safety rules. Whenever there's an accident like this, all 3 of them are broken.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
4. You need to pay attention, Charlie. There's 4 at the beginning of the show. And you brought up Gun Owners Radio. Yeah, they're watching. They were saying, "Yep, that we got shut down that way." So, yeah, you're in good company. We got shut down that way. It's been early December as well. We've also got some other good company that is watching us today. Our buddy John Richardson is
right.
John. Yes.
Yeah, so for the rest of you, John's got some kind of a sniffle something, so he didn't want to sniffle on the show.
Yeah. And then John Lutine says it was a 50 Desert Eagle. 50 Desert Eagle. A 50 AE Desert Eagle. Gee, I wonder.
We've heard about that.
Yes.
A couple times. It's on Paul's list.
Very much it is.
Well, do they still make phone books? Can we use the phone book to test this out?
They've gotten a lot thinner, Charlie.
They're real. I'm looking at mine. It's a lot smaller and a lot thinner.
Are you talking about the Desert Eagle or the phone book?
No, the phone book.
All right. Well, we are caught up on and then once we start putting on, it never fails. You start putting comments on the air, and they just start flooding in. But keep them coming. We're going to get to news, and if you've got a comment about the news, go ahead and put it up. We'll bring up relevant ones from time to time. But let me slip over to show notes and away from the comments page, and scroll down a little bit. Susan, we've got a story about New York.
The state of New York, or rather some of their anti-2A legislators, are seeing the writing on the wall and are conceding the court case of NYSRPA v. Bruin to the good guys. Assembly Bill A8684 has been introduced, which would make it a felony to knowingly have in your possession a rifle, shotgun, or firearm in or upon the following locations: public transportation, including ride-sharing services such as Uber, food and drink establishments, and gatherings of almost any sort. A large gathering is defined as 15 or more people. That's a normal Sunday dinner at our house. Your neighbor has a barbecue and has more than 15 guests. You better not bring out your barbecue handgun.
You know what? I've had several instances where Masada Ayub has come up to train, and there's been more than 15 guns there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what's fascinating about this law, it didn't say you can't carry concealed. It didn't say it said you cannot possess it there.
Mm-hmm.
How many gun stores would become illegal? I've got 5 staff. When the 10th couple people in the range, when there are 15 people in the building, the gun store itself is in violation. Someone somewhere is possessing a firearm. The thing that is insane with the way this is written, do you possess your luggage when you walk into an airport? Yeah, of course you do. In your luggage is a firearm if you're going to declare it to travel. This law is so badly written, it makes 4-H gun safety illegal, in addition to my birthday parties and stuff like that, right?
My biggest thing with a lot of the gun laws is that the anti-gun folks who know nothing about firearms are the people that are putting laws on this stuff, and it's very much like reading the book What to Expect When You're Expecting, written by Charlie Cook. You have no idea. They have no idea. They get the terminology wrong, and it's frustrating as all get out.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they understand the repercussions because they're in a utopian world where evil doesn't exist. We get rid of the nasty guns and everything will be beautiful and sunshine.
If you just make it illegal, people will stop doing it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, New York State is also where they did the 10-round magazine ban, and then all the police officers had magazines that had more than 10 rounds in it for one day, and then they had to go back and change that. Right.
Right.
Nathan says details of the law are irrelevant. It's an infringement on the right to own, transport, and use arms.
Bingo.
You're right, and unfortunately, what's probably going to have to happen is it's going to have to be drugged through court, and people like my boss are going to have to take them to court and beat them in court repeatedly and soundly in order for them to say, "Oh, all right, I guess." And
well,
then they'll.
And this is a bill that has not passed yet. So one, though it is New York, one can hope that some of the legislators have some sense. But just be aware.
Yeah, like the city council in San Jose, right?
Yeah. I mean, even the non-gun owning people have to pay the $25 homeowner's fee for the gun crime reduction act.
If you still have to pay the fee, then you're better off having a gun.
There you go.
Right. It's every house has to pay the fee, though they haven't determined who the not-for-profit is that gets the fee or what the handling fee is to get it to the not-for-profit. So somebody's going to be in there handling the fees, if you know what I mean.
Well, okay, I'm gonna indulge in a near conspiracy theory here.
Oh, good, because I got a straight up conspiracy theory that just came in on a comment that I'm gonna follow it up with.
Okay, was this a way for the New York legislature to get us to stop using Uber and Lyft and force us back into regulated and unionized taxis? Was this a way for restaurant owners who catered to legislators? Mm-hmm. Legislators wanted gun-free zones, and the rest of us said, fine, we'll go somewhere else. And so they said, could you make my competition at a disadvantage? Now every place is a gun-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
Top that.
Interesting.
All right, now this is a straight up, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is a conspiracy fact. No one has a New York CCW permit unless you are a celebrity. You can't even go into New York City with a New York State CCW permit. You know, I'm wondering if Alec Baldwin has a New York City CCW permit. I bet he does.
Ooh. Find out if Petrolino's watching. That's a story. Petrolino.
That is a story.
Calling Petrolino.
Well, okay,
we need to get him on the Petrolino phone.
And I'll argue with our earlier commenter. No, the case isn't over. We have to make the case that the common man will hear. God bless the exquisitely trained lawyers and Alan Gottlieb, but there's the battle of public opinion, and we want to win that too, so that we don't have this every year in perpetuity. So we have to say, gosh, more people got killed. Maybe if you went armed, things would be better. Here's why. Here's what we found. If they only hear the propaganda from the news, it's going to be a long, hard slog.
Yeah. Matthew, you're probably right, Matthew.
Yeah, I'll give you that one, Matt. Wow.
That's cute.
We have the best viewers, man, I'm telling you. And for those of you who are catching this on podcast, Matthew says, Alec Baldwin cannot spell CCW. So, yeah. All right. Where are we at? Susan, what's our next story?
Susan's fallen asleep because we took too long.
Right.
No, not quite. Republican state senators in Louisiana are blocking the approval of one of their former Republican colleagues to the head of the Gaming Control Board. Former Senator Ronnie Johns sat out the veto override session, which had legislation on transgender athletes and permitless carry bills, which the governor had vetoed. The transgender veto was overridden, but died in the House, and the permitless carry came up multiple votes short in the Senate.
Yeah, you can get bought by the governor, but your colleagues may not appreciate it. There's more. In Louisiana, reputation goes a very long way.
And this is senators are I do not know the Louisiana setup. In South Dakota, senators have 4-year terms and House members have 2-year terms. Is it the same in Louisiana?
I think so. Let me find out.
So I'm just hoping that the memory of his constituents are long enough when he comes up for re-election.
So I thought that it was all houses every 2 years, and Senate is rotated every 6.
No, ours is 4.
Yeah, South Dakota, the state house in South Dakota. We're talking the state house, not U.S. senators.
Not U.S. Senate. Okay.
The state house
is 4 years here.
Is 4 years, yeah. Okay. So, and the next one's Susan. What you didn't see because it happened behind and below me is our dog Little Dude, who is a 120-pound pit bull mix. Kind of went out behind me and to go find Susan. So I'm going to let her off the hook here for a little bit. And
because otherwise it's you that's doing the heavy breathing. So we're trying to figure that out for the podcast. We're just saying that all the rest of us are home alone. And
by the way, if you want that for your sound effects, it's a product that the Polite Society broadcasts now sell. The audio track of Paul doing heavy breathing.
Right. Coming soon to an OnlyFans channel near you.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking of.
We should make it an NFT.
Right now.
Oh, we'll all be 100 heirs, I'm telling you. There's a proposed law in Wisconsin to lower the minimum age to carry concealed from 21 down to 18. And when I saw this story written up, we talked about it on the Daily Bullet back on Thursday of last week, and then we touched on it again today. And the big thing is, oh my goodness, that's going to make high schools concealed carry campuses. And the liberal media in Wisconsin is going bonkers over this. You know what? Because there are some people who are 18 who are still in high school for a few months, or depending on if they've had to repeat a grade, maybe up to a year. But if they're responsible enough to get a concealed carry permit, statistically they're extremely responsible people. My point of view is great. It just means fewer school shootings, and if there are some, there's faster return fire.
Lots of kids solve that problem. They just put their shotgun that was in their truck back window, they parked off campus. It's not like firearms aren't in our culture, and they have been for a long time. What I think part of this bill might be, Paul, is a dare bill. We're going to pass this, Governor. I dare you to veto it because it's an election year. Go ahead.
Oh.
Tell me how you support the Second Amendment. But
I like that. I like that.
That would be kind of fun.
You know, and there's been a few of those here in South Dakota. Our Governor Noem, who's a rising superstar nationally. I just hope nobody gets the idea that she needs to run for either the top seat or the vice presidency in 2024. We need her here. Y'all can get. We'll figure out somebody else for president and vice president. We need Noem here. Keep your hands off everybody. But there's been bills about if you're going to compete in high school athletics as a girl, you need to have been a girl at birth. There's been bills similar to that have gone through that. The Republicans have been saying, okay, you say you're a conservative, here you go, here you go, here you go. And we'll see how that works out in November. So, let's see here.
Cool. Kind of a cool way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Next story, the last for our news segment. Big shock, we're over on news. Our Florida... DeSantis wants to make Florida the 22nd permitless carry state. You know what? They're in a race with Alabama and Ohio, although Ohio, I think, has got a gimpy leg there. But they're in a race with Alabama. And the story, as it's written out, says he has the power to get the legislation through and to his desk. And the headline is...
They're going to beat Ohio because Ohio's like in a three-legged sack race, and somebody put rocks in there.
With one gimp leg.
I'm telling you, it's bad. I was surprised. Ohio's going to come in number 40. I know it.
Oh my God.
And Nebraska's trying real hard to be number 41. So
right. Pennsylvania's in the running for that.
All right. Oh, wow. Roderick, let me get this up there. Indiana has a gimpy governor.
Yep.
Yeah, well, have you met Ohio's?
Pennsylvania, too.
Yeah, well...
The Ohio governor looks like if he's a cartoon character, he's the little chicken guy that's the friend of Foghorn Leghorn.
Oh, wow. You know what?
I say.
Yeah, boy.
Michael says, when I was in high school, we had a gun club and would compete with other schools. And this was in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're not so young. All I got to say, Michael, sorry, you're not so young anymore. That had to be a while ago. Wow.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to guess it was the 1900s.
Well, it could have been as late as the 1970s.
Still the 1900s.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, we had marksmanship when I was in grade school. We went to the gym, and we had air rifles. And, yeah, I was right.
I took trap shoot in college. And I carried a shotgun across campus.
Okay.
Yeah, took it into the class. The teacher put it in the locker.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our news segment. Why don't we go ahead and step aside to break? When we come back, we've got a couple DGUs we're gonna go over and discuss, and then we'll keep the show rolling. So hang on, everybody. We got this break to get to, and we got some DGUs. Be right back. Right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
Everybody, welcome to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the options of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. And I'm not quite sure. Susan, are you back yet?
No.
She's not on her microphone yet, but I did hear her behind me. So
we all did.
All right. Why don't I go ahead and take a crack at this one then while she's getting back into position. This one comes out of Rock Island, Illinois. On a Tuesday night, 3 armed thugs entered the Black Hawk Tobacco and Vape. They were all wearing masks. In Illinois, don't they have a mask rule where everybody... How do you tell the robbers? Because everybody's wearing masks. Anyway, they were intimidating customers, that's how you tell, and employees and demanding merchandise. This man looked at me in the eyes and said, "Do you have kids at home? Do you want to go home tonight?" As they were exiting the store, I saw him point the firearm towards a customer that was pulling up, and that's when I emptied the magazine into him, the store clerk said. The armed robber was pronounced dead at the scene. A second robber was injured and transported to the hospital in serious but stable condition. The third suspect was still at large. The store clerk will not be charged. Quote, after a preliminary review of surveillance video and witness interviews, it appears that the use of force by the employee was justified as self-defense and for the defense of others inside the store during the robbery, end quote, Rock Island County State's Attorney Dora Villarreal said. The store clerk, though, has decided that working at the tobacco and vape shop was not the best idea for himself and has since parted ways with his employer. Wow. A, good on you, man, for carrying, and B, good thought process of where's a safe place to work. Rob, what do you think, man?
I think there was security video, and that was a huge help. And the guy goes, if I have to defend myself in court, it would wipe out me and my family. I can't afford this job. One of my colleagues said, yeah, if you're going to carry a gun, no, not even if you're going to carry it. If you have it and you might use it, you need insurance to cover that cost. On the other hand, you're standing behind the counter, and a lot of us who've practiced for speed think our presentation is pretty fast, but you have to incapacitate your attacker before he shoots you. You can shoot him a lot. You're going to have to shoot him a lot really fast because he might still shoot you. And the goal here is to not get shot. So cheat. Get behind the counter, move. Do something besides trying to be speed and get in a race where you get hurt. Amanda, Charlie, straighten me out.
Rob Campbell has a term, and it's like killing back first is his term. It has to be self-defense. Your life has to be in jeopardy, and you have to be fast enough to be first, even after they get to set the time, the tune, the tone, and the circumstance.
Yeah. My only thing that I'm going to say about this in a possibly negative form is let me go back into the story. I saw him point the firearm towards a customer that was pulling up, and that's when I emptied the magazine into him. When you start firing, don't go into it with, I'm going to keep pulling the trigger until it goes click. I'm going to keep pulling the trigger until the danger has passed. If you've got a 17-round magazine and the danger is done at round 6, don't let off round 7.
Well, I picked up on another thing in that same sentence. And the thing that I picked up on was the fact that the bad guy had turned from him to someone else. And that was where I thought you were going to go with it. Charlie?
I was going to say there's 2 other guys there. So if you've got a 17-round magazine, obviously you're not in Massachusetts, but if you've got a 17-round magazine, he's got 2 friends.
Yeah.
One of which was wounded, but we're not sure whether that happened as they all tried to get out through the door at the same time.
Serious but non-life-threatening injuries, yeah. And do you want to go to empty magazine when there's 2 other people there?
2 other guys sitting there who aren't real fond of you right now.
This is true, but hopefully they see what happened to their friend and they beat feet.
Yeah, but hopefully
you
is
can't
not
bank on that.
necessarily. Hopefully is not a self-defense strategy. Right?
Absolutely,
it's true. So I love the phrase that Rob wrote in here: tactical patience. It's waiting for the opportunity to arise, and when you got a chance, it's pull out all the stops, but you have to wait until the right moment.
Yep, and the car was pulling up, and one of the robbers pointed a gun at the car that was pulling up. So obviously that robber attention was focused outside. You can clearly articulate danger to an innocent. And the focus wasn't on the clerk at that moment. So yeah, I mean, I could easily in my head see, well, he's not looking at me right now. I can save this person's life if I act. I could see that happening. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Paul, okay, let's go back to Mike Ochs's earlier comments. Think of how fast this changed. Unless you were looking for the clues, I'm looking at a drawn gun. I'm going to give him the cash register, and he can steal all the Christmas cards too.
Yep.
All right. Now he's turned away. No, he's no longer an immediate threat. Now he's putting a third person in jeopardy. Time to press. But if you're sitting there, go, oh, what just? You need to have those file cards in your head so you recognize what's happened.
Right.
All right. Let me. And we've got a heavy breather in here again. So I think I'm gonna. Susan, I think Susan's going to get the rest we're going to let Susan have the rest of the I wish I could move my camera because my little buddy's right here.
We can hear him.
I'm going to let Susan take care of them, and I'll take this next one as well. This one
think it's him.
Yeah, it is. Little Dude again is his name. Our 120-pound.
What is your issue? Come on, let's go.
Okay, I'm coming.
She's talking to the dog.
I hope she's talking to the dog, but maybe not.
This one out of Philadelphia. A pizza delivery driver was about to make a delivery when he was forced to defend himself. It was 7:38 p.m. in the Kensington section of the city. The driver was approached by a 23-year-old male who demanded he get out of the car and was pointing a gun at the driver as he made his demands. This driver was a pogo practitioner. He shot the would-be carjacker 6 times. The victim was licensed to carry by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The suspect did return fire, but the victim was unhurt. The suspect was transported by private vehicle to a local hospital where he was in critical condition. His 2 friends who drove him there are also being questioned. There have been 90 carjackings in the city of Philadelphia in less than a month, and there were 750 last year. If the trend continues, this year will surpass that total. Holy smokes, I don't think I would want to drive Uber, deliver pizzas. I don't, with that kind of a record, I don't think I'd want to drive in anywhere in the Pittsburgh area.
in the city of brotherly love.
Oh, that's Philadelphia. I'm sorry.
Philadelphia, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying real hard to beat New Jersey. They're just,
Yeah. New Jersey once removed.
Just over the river.
Yeah. There aren't any woods in that particular neck to be going through, so.
Again, you're getting out of your car. You're trying to avoid car seat entanglements.
And you've got a pizza in your hand.
Well, you're still getting out of the car. Maybe you haven't grabbed it yet. I'm going, yeah, I can hope. But this is a crazy case where darkness works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see them coming. Can they see what your hand that's behind you as you're taking the seatbelt off, and this hand comes out and the other one just trails behind? Yeah. So what a bad plan would be, all right, let's get all the way out of the car, and now let me fight my way out of the coat while the guy's pointing a gun at me. Gosh, that's a good way to get shot. Don't do that.
Amen.
Right. And if you can do it without exiting your car, because you don't want to really give away your escape vehicle.
Ooh. Yeah. Listen to her.
Love
Plus,
that.
you don't have to pay for that pizza if it's a 30-minute or free delivery.
Have you seen the prices of pizza lately? He's got a point.
Yeah, that's another box of ammunition.
I'm telling you.
I was thinking more of the insurance deductible as I shot through the door. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
If we're going to get out of here in the 90 minutes, we're going to have to ditch this last ditch this last break. Let me let's see here. Let me get this one up from Charlie Chambers. Appendix inside the waistband, Glock 17 with 2 mags here in North Carolina. More training soon. Yeah, Charlie was up here last summer and did the Mag 40, and Amanda and Charlie were there. So
yeah. So Charlie, are you going to Gunsight with us? We're going to Gunsight.
I think Charlie's done. I know. I need to write it in my calendar as I go to spend almost as much money on my car as the class would cost. Ugh. I have seen some pictures of Charlie. He's been doing some other training as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's only half of as much Charlie as there was.
Right. What a brand. What a brand.
All right. Well, at this point, normally we're coming back from break, and I go to Rob. I say, Rob, man, what's been going on over at Slowfax?
I've been writing a lot. Fortunately, John isn't here, so I'll take some. No. A number of friends asked me to comment on constitutional carry in their state, and you can run those numbers. Okay, if more people were carrying, how many lives would we save? Well, wait a minute. There are more similarities than just a spreadsheet as you go from state to state. The excuses that we're using are the same. That article is called Same Fear But Different States as we discuss constitutional carry and our neighbors going armed. Next article was, should we try to keep violent criminals away from guns, or should we try and keep violent criminals away from us? Is the tool dangerous, or is it the person? And that was brought up because some legislators in New York State gave us a law that says we can sue firearms manufacturers because they make a dangerous weapon and release it into the public. I compared the numbers. Compared to judges and prosecutors who released repeat violent offenders back on the public, why? The people that make firearms are doing us a great service because we're like 6 times more likely to use that gun in defense than have it used in a crime. Let's find a way that we can sue New York legislators and New York judicial officers. And then the book the story we already covered on the prohibited places in New York. My articles are up at Clash Daily and at Amoland and at my blog slowfax.wordpress.com. please visit my friend John Richardson, who writes at Only Guns and Money.
Charlie, what's shaking on riding shotgun with Charlie, man?
All right. Well, I've been doing 2 shows a month for the last couple months, and I think I'm going to be doing this for a couple months more until I can start to get a stockpile of some shows. But next week, I'm going to be putting out episode 138, and my passenger next week is going to be John Crump. One of the things that I'm excited about happening at SHOT Show is getting together with the Swanson Media Group, and we're going to be repurposing, I think is the right word, but we're going to be repurposing the episodes of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And 2 years after being the Blogger of the Year, I'm actually going to start writing articles. And the Swanson Media Group is starting a new online magazine called the Armed Lifestyle Magazine. So I'm going to be contributing to that as well. So I'm excited for that. Amanda, how about yourself?
Well, besides doing 2 hours of Eye on the Target radio on Sunday nights and Women for Gun Rights on Friday nights, so the only other thing I've really got to report out is that I lost my podcast carrier in the last couple weeks. And so I'm switching over to Libsyn, and for some reason now my podcast is not searchable or findable, but it's there. So obviously I've pushed the wrong button somewhere, and I've got to start to figure that out. So bear with me, folks. I will be back with that.
All right. So, Charlie, Swanson Media, are those the same people who do the frozen vegetables?
Frozen TV dinners.
Oh, that's it. Yes.
I think it's a different group of people.
Okay.
Although it looks like some of them may have had a couple of TV dinners.
Your punchline's going to be goes together like peas and carrots.
Well, you ready for this? This is what we're thinking of calling it. We're thinking of calling it Writing Shotgun with Charlie and putting shotgun in parentheses. So, kind of a play on the words. Play on writing shotgun.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
From our unofficial...
I have one more thing. I forgot. I am doing the Concealed Carry Fashion Show at the NRA Houston. It's going to be on Saturday evening at the Host Hotel. So stay tuned for more news, but it's going to be a deal.
Awesome.
When is this?
That's
NRA.
in May. That's going to be end of May.
Memorial Day. Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
Charlie Chambers says, working on a Gunsight Academy Pistol 250. It's a goal. Ringo's goal, too. By the way, if you know Charlie, you know Ringo. That little puppy is a saint. He might ride shotgun on the Chuck Wagon Silverado. So.
Charlie is a great brand. Think October. Gunsight October. And get in before all of our other friends get in and keep you out. Same
All
to you,
right.
Charlie.
Well,
yes.
Well, that's gonna. And then, as for me, I would encourage you, if you stumbled across this, please know that the Daily Bullet, the Weekly Bullet, and this are all available on podcast. If you're watching on video, please look us up on podcast as well. Believe me, if you listen to podcasts somewhere, I made sure it's there, no matter where it is. And if you happen to listen on podcast and you thought, these guys look like they're having a lot of fun, that kind of sounds cool. Come join us every Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, and that's at the SAF YouTube and Facebook pages is where you can comment and you can get your comments on the air. Or if you just want to see us cut up on, you can catch us on the OpsLens app. So I think that's going to do it, man. I want to ask everybody to go ahead and join there's a Facebook group for listeners, or we just had a person added earlier to there. Earlier today, somebody asked to join, so it keeps growing. Just search Facebook if you're a Facebook member. I'm not saying you have to join Facebook, but if you're member of Facebook and you'd like to interact with other fans of the show, just search for Polite Society Podcast listeners. That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Mike Ox for joining us today. I don't think it's going to be a very long time before we ask him to come back because, boy, he's an easy interview. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, I'm going to shut the stream down here in just a second, but I got to get this one up before we go. Charlie, you're a brilliant man, and for you to say that, hey, what can I say? All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and shut the streams down. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for participating. Come see us again